What if I told you that the reason you're struggling with cravings has nothing to do with willpower? Cravings are normal and they're not a sign that you're failing. Cravings are actually a lot less mysterious than most people think. So today, I want to teach you how to think about cravings differently. You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Cloud. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or quit drinking for good, this podcast will help you to stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Let me teach you how. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about cravings because, on a very practical level, you can't quit drinking or cut back unless you learn how to deal with your cravings. People ask me all the time, how do I stop cravings? Will they ever go away? And I get it, cravings are annoying. If we didn't have cravings, it would be so much easier to quit drinking, right? And most people think that the way to deal with cravings is to suppress them or resist them or fight back. That's what I used to do when I was trying to quit drinking, so I speak from personal experience. But today, I want to offer you a different approach. Because, also from personal experience, I'm here to tell you that fighting with your cravings does not make them go away. Let's start with what even is a craving? Simply put, a craving is the desire to drink. I use the words craving and urge interchangeably, so you'll hear me use both in this episode. And for the purposes of this conversation, assume that they mean the same thing. A craving has two components, a thought and a feeling. The thought is what happens in your mind when you want to drink, and it sounds something like, I deserve a glass of wine. A drink would make me feel better, or I can't do this without a drink. These are words passing through your mind when you're having a craving. You might not always catch the exact sentence in your mind because we have over 60,000 thoughts every day, and most of them are unconscious. But if you pause in the moment, you will be able to notice that the idea is there and it's some variation of, I want to drink now. The second component of the craving is the feeling. And by feeling, I mean the physical sensations in your body that accompany your desire for alcohol. And these vary from person to person, and they also depend on the intensity of the craving. For a mild craving, you might not notice much happening in your body. Maybe you feel a little restless. Maybe you notice you're breathing faster. Maybe your mouth is watering when you think about the drink. And a more intense craving might look like your hands are shaking, you start to fidget, your heart is beating faster, maybe you're sweating, maybe your facial muscles begin to twitch, and so on. I should add a caveat here that if you suspect that you might be physically dependent on alcohol and you're worried about withdrawal symptoms, please speak to your doctor about cutting back safely because in some rare cases, a medically supervised detox might be required before you can quit drinking. But for most people, the physical sensations of a craving are really not that intense. It's the obsessive thoughts like, I need a glass of wine right now or I'm going to lose it, that keep us stuck reaching for the drink. But here's what most people get wrong. They treat the craving like an emergency. When that alarm goes off in their minds that says, it's time for a drink, they treat it like a done deal. The urge feels powerful and absolute, and most people respond automatically by reaching for the drink. And worse, a lot of people panic when they have a craving because they think that something has gone wrong. If you're trying to quit drinking or to drink less, obviously your goal is not to drink. Some part of you knows that alcohol is not good for you and it's negatively affecting your health or your relationships. And that's the part of you that does not want to drink. That's your conscious mind, the part of you that is thinking about the future and is capable of setting long-term goals. And if your goal is to cut back or to quit drinking, then how come you still have cravings? This is where people tend to spin in self-judgment. They tell themselves, I shouldn't want to drink. Don't I know any better? After what happened last night, I should not still be craving alcohol. But just because you've consciously decided that you want to quit drinking doesn't mean that your desire for alcohol is going to disappear immediately. as if you have somehow flipped a switch. Rather than being a sign that something has gone wrong, cravings are a sign that your brain is working exactly as it's supposed to. Cravings are completely normal. I cannot say this enough. In fact, it would be weird if you didn't have cravings at all. And there are two reasons why you have cravings. I talked about this in episode 57, why you still want to drink. So if you haven't listened to that episode already, make sure to check it out because I go into more detail there about the desire for alcohol and where that desire comes from. But I'll give a brief summary here. First, you have cravings because you have taught your brain to associate drinking with certain situations, certain times of day, certain people, or certain emotions. If you're used to pouring a glass of wine the minute you're done with work, then that's what your brain expects. The next day, as soon as you close your laptop, the desire for the drink will kick in. And if you're used to drinking when you're sad as a way to numb that feeling, then your brain has learned that the only way to deal with sadness is to drink at it. So next time you feel down, the craving will kick in. The thing I want you to realize, and I've said this many times, but I can't say it enough, is that anything we do repeatedly becomes a habit. Anything you think repeatedly, feel repeatedly, or do repeatedly is a habit. And if you repeat that habit enough times, it becomes automatic, which means you do it on autopilot without thinking. And this includes the craving for alcohol. The second reason you still have cravings is that some part of you believes that alcohol is providing something beneficial. Maybe you believe it's helping you to relax. Maybe you think it makes date night more special. Maybe you think it's not fair that other people get to drink and you don't. And until you change those beliefs, odds are you'll still experience cravings. I give more tips for how to do this in episode 57, so again, go listen there for more tips. But the main point is that you have to start finding evidence that those beliefs are not always true. So these are the two reasons you have cravings. If you're trying to quit drinking and you still find yourself wanting a drink, it's one or both of these reasons. And now that you know what cravings are and why you have them, let's talk about how to deal with them. First of all, stop judging yourself for having cravings. As I've just explained, cravings are completely normal, and there's no reason to panic or to shame yourself if you still want a drink. Because when you tell yourself that cravings shouldn't be happening, you go into resistance, and from that state of mind, it's difficult to remember that you still have power over the craving. Think about the two components of a craving, a thought and some sensations in your body. But, like one of my coaches used to say, a thought is just a sentence in your mind. The words, I need a drink, don't have power over you. Those words don't make the alcohol jump out of the bottle and into your glass. You're an adult, you have free will, and you still get to decide how to respond when you catch those words running through your mind. You have so many thoughts every day that you don't act on. Maybe some days you want to yell at your boss, but you don't, hopefully. Maybe you want to take a nap during a meeting, but you don't. Maybe you want to buy a one-way ticket to Paris for tonight, but you probably don't. You have so many desires every day that you don't panic about. Because in other areas of your life, you know very well that desire does not control behavior. And yet, when it comes to our relationship with alcohol, we somehow tend to forget that desire is not a command, and we're not at the mercy of our cravings. And as for the physical sensations that accompany a craving, I'm not saying those are pleasant. No one wants to feel fidgety or restless or sweaty or shaky. But you can sit with those sensations without reaching for a drink, and you will survive. You don't have to like the experience, but you can absolutely let it happen to you without resistance, and you will come out on the other side. So that's all well and good, but what do you do in the moment when the craving hits? Because we can philosophize and theorize, but without practical strategies for how to handle a craving in the moment, you will still feel powerless and out of control when the urge hits. In the simplest terms, when you have a craving, You want to calm your nervous system down and you want to distract yourself. Cravings feel like agitation in the body. They feel urgent, like there's an alarm going off that you need to respond to. If the craving is intense, your body might go into fight or flight mode, and in that state, it's really hard to think rationally and to remind yourself that you will sleep better if you don't drink. If your nervous system is activated, that's what you need to address first. And the simplest way to do that is to take a few deep breaths with the exhale longer than the inhale. That is step one, calming down your body. You can also try things like shaking your hands vigorously for 30 seconds and notice how you feel after that. You could go splash cold water on your face, that helps too. Movement of any kind will do the trick as well. You can go for a walk or do a few jumping jacks or hold plank for 60 seconds and see how that changes your focus. I teach my clients a whole host of other techniques based on neuroscience so that they can neutralize a craving in 60 seconds. And some of these techniques are not as easy to describe on a podcast. But as you might have noticed by now, all of these things that I'm suggesting have to do with the body. That's how you calm down your nervous system, working with the body first. This is really important. The mistake I see people making is that they try to think their way out of a craving. They expect that if they have a good reason for wanting to quit drinking, let's say they want to quit because they want to be a better example for their children. They expect that when they have the urge to drink, they should be able to remind themselves of that reason and the craving will go away on its own. I hate to break it to you, but that will not work because the reason you want a different relationship with alcohol lives in your conscious awareness. But in the moment when you're craving alcohol, it's your unconscious mind that's in charge. And that's why in the moment you have to start with the body. Once you have calmed yourself down and you feel less physically activated, then come back to the cognitive aspects of the craving and try to reframe your thoughts. A helpful analogy might be to think about a child having a tantrum because their favorite toy just broke. When the kid is screaming in distress, you don't try to reason with them. You comfort them first until they calm down, and only then do you talk to them about replacing or repairing the toy. Otherwise, if they're still in the height of emotion, your words will just not reach them. And it's the same with your brain in the middle of a craving. Rational reminders like, I will be more productive tomorrow morning if I don't drink tonight, won't do very much to help you when you're squirming at FOMO because your friend just ordered a gin and tonic and you're nursing a Diet Coke. Start with the body. Deep breaths, movement, cold water, shaking. These are all super simple and quick ways to downregulate your nervous system. And once the craving subsides, then you can approach this more rationally and see what you can learn from the craving. Because cravings are information. They will help you to better understand your patterns and what you have taught your brain about when and why a drink is required. And when you approach your cravings with curiosity instead of judgment, you gain power over them. You can start to identify old habit loops that kick in on autopilot. For example, you might realize that you have a craving whenever you sit down to watch TV after dinner because that's the pattern that you have repeated. But maybe if you check in with yourself, you might notice that you don't actually want to drink in that moment. It's just that that's what you've done in the past, so that has become the expected behavior. But if you really pause and ask yourself, do I want a drink? You might actually be surprised to find out that you don't really want the drink, it's just the habit. And I don't need to tell you, you don't have to do something just because that's what you've done in the past. You can notice the old ghosts of desire, I sometimes call it the memory of desire, and you can choose not to respond. And every time you don't give in to the craving, you're showing your brain that alcohol is not necessary. You're proving that wanting a drink and having a drink are two completely different things. And you weaken that association between alcohol and the trigger. If you're used to drinking when watching TV, but then you practice interrupting that pattern and you make a tea instead, over time, the memory of that desire fades away. One day, you will be able to sit on the couch and turn on Netflix, and the thought of alcohol won't even cross your mind. Because everything we do repeatedly becomes a habit, and that includes how you respond to certain triggers like sitting down on the couch and turning on the TV. So, in summary, cravings are completely normal. Cravings don't mean that you're failing at sobriety. They just mean that your brain remembers alcohol. And you don't need cravings to disappear completely in order to change your relationship with alcohol. You can notice the craving and still choose not to drink. And instead of judging yourself for having a craving or praying that it will go away, simply focus on your body and take a few moments to calm down and ground yourself, and then make a more intentional choice. And instead of asking, how do I make this craving disappear? Ask yourself, what can this craving teach me about my relationship with alcohol? People often ask me, how long do cravings last? And that's a reasonable question, but a better question is, what happens when you stop being afraid of your cravings? Because that's what freedom is like. Not trying to eliminate all cravings, but trusting yourself that you can remain in control, even if your brain says that a drink would make everything better. And if you'd like help learning how to manage cravings and rewire your brain so that alcohol becomes less and less relevant in your life, I would love to help you. This is what I do with my clients every day, and I would love to help you break up with alcohol and live happily ever after. Book a free consultation using the link in the show notes, and let's talk. I'm also teaching a free class this week called Never Want Alcohol Again, and in that class, I will talk more about how not just to quit drinking, but how to stop wanting alcohol. The link for the class is also in the show notes, and I would love to see you there. Take good care, my friends, and I'll talk to you next week.